what was it like growing up, Dante Banks?
Well, I was basically, it was a nomad type of life. We didn't have no suitable or no stable home type of environment. My mother, who we loved dearly, me and my brothers and sisters, she had 10 children, 7 boys and 3 girls. So we moved around a lot because of the situation, which, as bad as it may seem, the situation which all youths, youngsters, and people of the ghetto and people in the inner city suffer from is they mother be kind of addicted to drugs. So that kind of makes you kind of move around a lot because there's nothing stable. The only recollection of a stable home or someone's stable home that I had was when we stayed with my grandmother, and that was in the Englewood area. And that's where everything started at, because that's where the longest stench of my life stemmed from, is in the Englewood area. But overall, you know, coming up in Englewood was hard and exciting at the same time. You know, it was hard because you're out there doing what you got to do, and you're seeing everybody out there doing what they got to do in order to survive out there. It was exciting because as a little kid, adolescent, you seeing all the hustlers, you seeing the women of the night, you seeing the guys gambling. You got the after-hour joints. You got a lot of things going on out there, and all that kind of it is somewhat. Even though the hustler was there, I was more intrigued by the gamblers than the hustlers, because I knew if I sit there and watch them long enough, it was just like TV. Someone in the end gonna get shot, someone gonna get stabbed, someone gonna get whooped, because in the end, someone is gonna be cheating. Someone gonna get mad because they losing. So all that kind of was like, I don't know if that was my first introduction to violence, but at the same token, you know, it was one of them things that kind of intrigued me to sit there and watch them gamble, and then end up knowing, I think I could have took more bets on the after effect than the gamble itself, and ran my own little book and said, hey, I bet you in the end someone's gonna get shot. How many odds do you got on a shooting? So, you know.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit. And I think this would be beneficial to a lot of our viewers and listeners as well. If I heard you correctly, you said that you grew up in a home where there was some drug addiction. If you don't mind just talking about that just a little bit, because I'm sure there's some folks that's in the audience that may be going through the same thing.
That is a very sensitive subject, and one in which, you know, it catches my throat every time, because to see your mother on drugs, you know, is a hard thing as a youngster, because you're in a situation where you can't help. You're too young to even understand and know that there are such things as addiction centers. So you have to kind of take all this in and look at it without knowing a solution to it. So my mother, you know, it was very traumatizing what it was, because I used to have to come in from school and I used to have to literally find my mother to find out where she at, because back then, you're talking about the early 80s, what you call sherm sticks, happy sticks, wicked sticks. I don't know what name they might have gave from whatever side of town they were selling them from. But these things, when you smoke these things, they was like turn the individual into a zombie. So the individual is walking around, and sometimes they stuck, they can't even walk around. And that was the case with my mother. You know, she was stuck a lot of times. So I had to find her, because I know she's somewhere stuck after smoking this, and have to get her and kind of carry her back home, or carry her to the bed, or carry her somewhere and stand over and watch her until she come back around. You know, my oldest brother, I'm like the fourth of the 10, and my 3 older brothers was locked up. You know, this is a family that no stranger to the penal system. So they was locked up. So they kind of, at a young age, we talking 12, 13, you got to stand up and be the man of the house and watch over your mama because of the situation she's in, you know. And tell you the truth, what's so hard to swallow at this point here is coming home from school one day and seeing all of our furniture out on the lawn and in the street, and seeing my mother having to pick through this and crying at the same time, and the little kids behind her. And then from there, she have to knock on doors and try to ask people to take us in. And one Pacific lady took us in. I never forget, she took us in. And my mother turned around and seen me still standing in the street. And she said, "You coming?" I said, "No, I ain't coming." I said, "I got somewhere to stay." But in actuality, I didn't have nowhere to stay. I went back around to the old house we just got put out in, because there was a car on the curb. And I used to sleep in that car. And I get up in the morning and go to school and wash up in the school bathroom and eat breakfast at school. You know, these are parts of my life people really don't know, but I'm sharing this with my extended CRED family. I'm sharing this with the participant, because you got to know how hard things was, and you got to know what the word redemption really means and where it's finna come from. You got to know the history of what's started all this up. But, you know, I took it from there, Kurt. And after that, I ran to
Let's pause for a minute, if you don't mind. Because
yes,
whenever I talk to you, it seems like you always skip right to Englewood, right? Now, I had the privilege of meeting you before Englewood, right?
Yes, sir.
I remember being I had to be about 12 years old, and we were in the Fuller Park area, right? And where did you move from to get to that area there, right? And it was interesting, and I think you skip around it because I think that you knew that your sister had a somewhat crush on you, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, that's where we was coming from. We was actually coming from the Englewood area at that time, right there, okay, to the low end, to where we kind of ran to you. And ironic as that story may seem, you know, when I came there, you told me the story and you told it in detail. You know, I know you had to actually be there to know all them details. And then when I called my sister, I said, "You know Kirk?" And she was more or less like, "Yeah, I know Kirk. Tell him to give him my number." I said, "Okay, we're gonna stop there."
Okay, so let's talk about being homeless just for a little bit, right? I know that had to be really, really traumatic for you at that time. And so you said that you had 9 other siblings, correct?
Correct.
And then 3 of them, which were older than you, were incarcerated.
Yes.
How was that? I mean, like with your older brothers being locked up.
You know, my older brothers being locked up took a lot from me, because I looked up to my older brothers. You know, they was always out there. They was always doing things. They was always taking up for me. You know, whatever I get into, any type of street fights I get into, there they come, and you know they gonna put in work. You know, because here's their little brother, and to take my brothers from me and leave me, you know, helpless like that, you know, it was very traumatizing to me. And right now today, you know, me and my brothers are close, you know, and we look after each other. See, even to this day right here, you know, even though we was dysfunctional, even though we stayed separated, because at this year right here, Kurt, is the first year since then that all of us have ever been out.
So you're saying since the 80s? Since the
80s. And we've never, ever all been out on the street together. This is the first year.
Oh man, that's beautiful, brother. So I saw you kind of lit up a little bit when you talked about the Englewood area. So that means that it's something that was intriguing, and I think you talked about it a little bit, that was happening in that part of the community that kind of gauged your attention.
Yeah, it's everything. Like I said, I'd rather go outside than to watch TV, because outside it was live. It was a show of its own outside, you know. It was never a dull moment in Englewood, you know, because something always happening, something is always going down. It's always the police coming to chase somebody, running past you, to dropping a pack next to you. I mean, it was always going down right there, you know. And like I said, any kid who don't have another look on life kind of find that to be exciting when you see these guys out there doing what they're doing and getting the rewards, or what you figure is the rewards for what they're doing, driving the fancy cars and so what, you know.
So you said you more or less looked up to the hustlers, right? Was there any person in your family other than your older brothers that you would say that you looked up to when you were coming up?
Yeah, no doubt about it. My grandmother, she was a glue to the family. You know, I looked up to my grandmama. You know, I'm a granny's boy because that little one time we had a little family structure was in her house when we stayed with her. And she ran her house with discipline. She was organized, she was structured. Ain't nothing going down up in there, and you're gonna have a home environment, you know, and I looked up to my grandmother for that, you know. She kind of raised me for those few years in a way that left an imprint upon my heart.
So when could you say, if you looked back, when did you start turning from Dante Banks to Big Dirt?
At that time right there, when that furniture was on the lawn, when I seen my mother crying and going from door to door, that's when I was bound. I sometimes you just ain't got no other choice. Sometimes, you know, you led to that life even though you don't want to go to that life. You know, you don't have no other options because you ain't seeing nothing else in the neighborhood that can tell you another option, that you need some money right now, that you need things to turn around for you right now. You got to remember, Kurt, at this time right here, I might be about 13, 14 at this time right here. Barely hitting it. I think I might have been a freshman in school, or have I even made it to high school yet? But I went and I had a cousin who dealt and dabbled a little bit. And I went to my cousin, I told her, I said, I need some work.
Did you say her?
Yes.
Okay.
I went to her and said, I need some work. She gave me an 8-ball. And everybody know back then what an 8-ball was. You had the 8-ball. And I stood out there on a corner. And at this time right here, it was like in November. So I'm out there freezing, but I'm out there working. And I took that 8-ball from Dante Banks to what you know right now to be Big Dirt.
So you say this was 12 or 13, did you ever attend high school?
Yes.
And what was that experience like for you?
I went to Paul Robeson High School over on 69th and Normal. That was, you know, if you ever seen Cooley High, or you ever seen anything like that, this is the type of high school that is. It's always, you know, there was guys there that looked like they was in their 20s and 30s there. There was some older looking guys there, but it was also what you call a crutch, and it kind of not give you the full education that you need what the public school's doing. You know, they'll rush you through one door and out the next door, and you don't really grasp nothing. So I went to school, but I went to school only because I made a promise to my grandma. When I told her I finished that school, she said, finish high school. And, you know, she always pushing education on us, you know. And I said, I gave her my word, and even as a young boy, when I get my word on something, I kind of stand on it. So I kind of completed high school at a very, very, at the slimmest skin of my chinny chin, I finished high school. But I finished, you know.
So in the area that you were living in, what was the gang culture like?
Gang culture then in that area was basically what my high school was majority BDs. What I was, it was the majority, 99.9% of GDs. And on the outskirts, we had Stones and Vice Lords on the outskirts. So we just kind of circled around, but mainly where I hung up, it was just mainly GDs.
I heard you say we. So when were you introduced to the Gangster Disciples?
Oh, hey, that high school, you know, I'm doing my little thing, Kirk. I'm doing my little personal, we ain't really organized, we just running in the neighborhood, right? So now the neighborhood, now they calling for neighborhood to be organized now. So they sent a guy up to Robertson, up to the high school, and they told that guy to go up to that high school and find out who's up there. This is the head GDs, right? At the time, I don't know nothing about them because we just doing our little thing, doing it without no type of authority or even recognizing authority. But authority was around, and they sent the guy up there, and he called all the guys out to the back of the school, and everybody was running through the school talking about, man, back then it was generals and dons, you know, so they was talking about Don Puncho was back there, and he want everybody, every GD and BD, whatever you is, he wants you in the back of the school. And we went in the back of the school, and he said, hey man, I'm around here, and I want to know from around here, we want to organize this area here, and we want to know who is the most influential guy amongst y'all. And they all said, Dirk and Bible. And then Bible said, well, I don't have much influence as you think. Dirk got all the men. So he yielded to me. And that's how it started.
So was it at that time that you started to engage with the, if you will, drug trade, or had that happened long before that?
It happened before that.
Okay.
It happened before that. I was already into the drug trade, and already had guys working with me prior to them coming over there. So it really wasn't even the drug because the guy didn't know about the drugs. It was actually about then, and as it is from my era, it's all about the work that you put in.
So think about doing this transition. If you think, what was the most traumatic incident that happened during that time period?
The time period of the high school, or the time?
Yeah, the time period of okay, now you're a GD, you know what I mean? You're not at the highest level yet, but you're still going up the ladder, if that makes sense.
Could we talk about traumatic experience as a good thing?
Both. I mean, let's talk about a good experience, and then let's also talk about a bad one.
Well, the good one was, you know, everybody who's called themselves GDs, everybody who's on count back then, never met Larry Hoover. So when they came to get me, and they told me that they wanted me to be the shot caller for that neighborhood, I told them I got to meet him. You know, I said, there's no way possible that I can sit up here and be a part of something, because I think this thing, what y'all asking me to do, is big. So I need to hear it from him. I need to know that he's real, and I need to know that y'all ain't just trying to pour no wool over my eyes, because y'all saying I got this and I'm responsible for these many guys, and if this takes place, this is gonna happen. You know, it was a whole lot of rules and regulations when I'm just doing my thing without no rules and regulations. So they said, okay, and they set up the meeting, and I got a chance to meet him, and we clicked on from then on. You know, it was a beautiful relationship.
So a lot of people hear about Mr. Hoover, and it's like a fictional character, but you are one of the ones that were actually able to meet him. What was that meeting like, and how was he as a person?
Well, when I sat in the visiting room waiting on him, and they already, like you said, it's the fictional thing. You in your mind, you think a 6 foot, 200 solid type of dude finna come through the door, and you think, you know, you're kind of nervous. It's like, how is this gonna come out? You know, what's gonna be said here? what words I got to get prepared for. But when you see him, he's humble, he's meek, he's intelligent. You know, it's one of them things like you said, wow, you know, this is talent being wasted in here, man. This is what we need on the street to help form and shape things the way they're supposed to be.
And so by you knowing him, and if he had something to say right now, I'm not saying that you're him, but by you knowing him, what do you think his message would be today?
Well, he didn't already said it. He didn't say it then, it's gonna be the same message today, you know, is that what he did was he was trying to organize us. We so locked into the street, we don't even see the bigger picture. He's trying to organize us on a political level in order to make sure that we take the youngsters and drive the force of the political force in the right way that it benefit our neighborhoods. This is what he was really on. When he started 21st century vote and we out there electing aldermen and trying to get on the mayor's ballot and different things like this, this is what he was pushing for. He was pushing for a political agenda that the neighborhood can now grow on that level right there.
So you're moving up, you've met Mr. Hoover. So now you're on, right? Once the meeting went down, you're on, right? And I would assume that now you have some solidified rank within the organization. And so how was that being, if you will, over and having this type of hierarchy over the guys?
One thing about it, and I was blessed that I never let things go to my head. I never let power go to my head, and I never abused power. You know, if you see most of the pictures of today with me in them, you'll never know which one was Dirk, because I'm always on the side, I'm always in the cut. I always push my men out front because it was the men who made me who I am. So I don't need to be in the light, and I don't need to be the one that's showing like I'm doing everything when together we was doing everything. So, you know, I always took a back seat and I always treated everybody with the utmost respect. You know.
So let's jump back to one of those incidents that you can recall that kind of shook you up a little bit.
An incident that shook me up. You know, there was sad as it may seem, and I tell this story, there was a drought. And during these times when there was a drought, you got to try to get work from wherever you can get it from. You know, my supply is kind of, he's out trying to find something, so I got to go to other sources. And at this time here, I know these are some dangerous other sources I'm going to, because where I got to pick the work up from is almost like a firecracker around there. So what I did was I pulled out my race car. I had a 64 Malibu souped up and the thing was ready. I end up going to pick up the work, but the police got on me. And I had to put that car to the test. And boy, did I put it to the test. I lost the police, but the actual driving that car at that speed down a one-way street that was so narrow that if anybody would have stepped out and any door would have opened, it would have been all over, you know, because I'm going at a unimaginable speed. And that kind of shook me up, because at the time my sister was in the car with me. And, you know, I don't mind messing with my life, but, you know, I brought her along because I needed a girl in the car. You know, back then you ride with a girl so everything can look a little legit for you. And no more, I trusted her, so I took her with me.
So now we're to the early 90s, right? And if anyone knows history, we know that other than now in the 60s, the late 60s, and then to the mid 70s, the early 90s was probably not probably, but it was the most violent times in Chicago history. So what was the violence like for you?
The violence in the 90s, and it's we here on CRED, and I told only a handful of people this. The violence in the 90s between the BDs and the GDs actually started with us in Englewood. At the time I got my rank, also the Freedmans got their rank. We got our rank at the same time. Shorty Freeman gave his nephew's rank, and they gave me rank. We growed up together, me and the Freemans, but at this time right here, we had to split the land. Splitting the land up like that, they was asking for more than what they was entitled to. Only draws out a line that you can't cross now. I need this territory, they need that territory. And they wouldn't yield to the territory, and they figured they should have more. And this is what started the war over territory. Who should have what? And that was the bloodbath of the 90s that we speaking about right now. All started over territory.
So I take it was a lot of loss. And I think the thing is that even when I think about it, is that you said that y'all grew up together, right? So yeah. It was some folks who lost their lives that you probably were friends with that was something different than you were. Would I be correct in saying that?
Correct.
So I heard you saying that you were in a high-speed chase with some drugs. So now I guess you would say you're a heavy in the drug trade, right? And what did that lead to, right? With you being a heavy, you said you had all these fancy cars. Did you ever feel that was gonna end?
Not far as by my choice, it wouldn't end. Mm-hmm. By law enforcement choice, they can see an end to it. But me, I always had this theory, Kurt, that I'm on the street 24/24. The police only on the street 8 hours. There's no way they can stop what I'm doing, and I control more time and more territories than they can cover. So that's how I looked at things. So I don't never think that it was going to be a stopping point, not unless I got tired of doing it.
So let's speed forward. And I think when we started off, we said Dante Banks from life sentence to life saver. So that would have to mean that you eventually got caught. Would I be correct in saying that?
You would be correct.
And would I be correct in saying that you were handed down a life sentence? Meaning, let me frame this up, meaning that you would never see the streets again. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when you're standing in front of the judge and you went to trial, you said you had money, so I'm sure you had probably the best of attorneys. And the judge says, Mr. Banks, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. What was the first thing that went through your mind?
Well, in the federal system, you kind of get a pre-sentence report before you go see the judge. So you kind of almost know what you're looking at before you get to the judge. When the pre-sentence report came back, it said that my level, they deal with guidelines level in the feds. My level is a level 48. The book only goes to 42, Kurt.
Oh, wow.
So now you talking 6 levels that ain't even existing on the book. So it automatically read life across the thing. when I get to my lawyer, I said, what is this, man? What is this is absurd, man. This is crazy. This is unbelievable. So the effect of it hits you when you first get the paperwork. And it's like upset, angry, confused. You know, you're going through a whole bunch of emotions. But the bottom line word is unbelievable. That you can sentence a person to life in jail. And they saying that the conspiracy that they would sentence me to life in jail for only lasted 9 months, what you gonna sentence me for? The conspiracy went farther than that, but they said we only gonna sentence you for 9 months of the conspiracy. We saying that you sold so much drug in 9 months that you don't need to be on the street no more, is what they saying.
So I read over the case a little bit, and it said that the judge didn't even want to give you life because he knew that there was a discrepancy in sentencing. Meaning, when I read some of his notes, he said that someone would have to sell 1,500 kilos of raw cocaine in order to get the sentence that he handed down on you. But he said that he had to stick to what the law said and give you life. Is that correct?
That's correct. What you're seeing is that crack cocaine, 1 gram of crack cocaine equals 100 grams of powder. That's what they saying. Crack was much harder sentence, a much harder drug, so they sentenced you more harder for crack than they did powder cocaine.
Do you think there was any racial bias in that kind of sentencing?
Yes, because it only affected blacks. And that was the argument we made at sentencing hearing. This only affects blacks, so why is we the only ones getting sentenced to these harsh sentences? You know, I had white powder cocaine, in which that is a more pleasurable drug among Europeans that snorts it and they get a smack on the wrist. Then you come to us because we in the neighborhoods and they smoking it, and you give us the hardest time when you need powder cocaine to make crack cocaine.
So you're sentenced to life. What did your family say? Were any of them at the courtroom with you?
Yeah. My family was there, and I had 6 co-defendants. It's 6 of us all together. And you gotta remember, Kirk, we was young.
How old were you at this time?
I would have to be, if I'm not mistaken, probably 23, somewhere up in there. The youngest was about 18. So they gave out like 4 life sentences and 3 life sentences. 2 got 30 years, and the girl that was on the case ended up with 10 years.
So it was a young lady on the case with you as well?
Yes. It was a young lady I was with at the time. They arrested her too. But,
did she have anything to do with what you were doing, or was she just guilty by association?
Guilty by association. Most of the testimony and trial during her was just spending money. That's it.
So again, you have this life sentence. You say your family was at court with you. Do you remember like looking back and seeing what they looked like when the sentence was given to you? No,
because there was too much crying back there.
So they were crying?
Yeah. You know, 6 co-defendants, a lot of family members in there. There was too much crying in there, so I ain't turn around because I ain't even want to see the faces and the crying and all that. So I kind of just walked back to the bullpen because they sentence you one by one and then walk you to the bullpen after they finish.
So when they walked you to the bullpen, what was your conversation like with your co-defendants?
Well, everybody was quiet. You know, and everybody was in their own thought, and some was crying, and some was sitting down, and you know, we just lost for words, Kurt, because we didn't think that it was going to end that way at that time, right there.
And I see in the paperwork they had you as the ringleader. How did you feel about your co-defendants getting that much time? Did it affect you at all?
Yeah, and And really, I wish, I used to always tell them, try to get a deal out of this, not telling deal, but try to get a deal out of this. You know, it's best, you know, I know my position. I know what they're trying to do to me, you know, but y'all still young, you know, y'all guys don't deserve this right here. Cause they some good dudes, they good guys, man. And I don't want to see them, I didn't want to see them like that. And right now today, we're all still together because they stood strong then, and they continue to say, man, we're gonna ride this out together. Some good dudes, good strong brothers, man.
So had you ever been incarcerated before getting a life sentence?
Yeah. Not, I had a murder case, an attempt murder case, other drug cases, you know.
So you were no stranger to being incarcerated, but I know this was a different feeling now that you're going into the federal system with a life sentence. What was that like when you first stepped in the door?
Everything about TV was real. Seeing the bars, seeing how dirty and gloomy the place looked, seeing people around there and how they own, and I mean, it was, you asked about traumatized, that's the second part of traumatized, because I went to an old prison. I didn't go to one of the prisons that, you know, the new built prisons. I went to Terre Haute, my first visit, and Terre Haute is one of the old, it's like Leavenworth and Lompart, you know, the ones you hear about on TV. That's how old that one is. And you got, man, one just cracked, cold in there, birds flying through there, cockroaches. I mean, this place here is off the chain, man. Just, you know, you got to keep your commissary, you put your food up in high places so the mice and rats can't get it, you know.
Was there a gang structure in the federal institution?
Oh yeah. Gang structure in the federal system continue to go right now to this day right here, and they still organize inside of the federal system. More so in the states than anywhere else, they organize in the federal system. And what you got in the federal system, you got everybody together because they have a coalition. You don't have no one GDs, no BDs, no vice lord. Y'all are all one up in there, and it's called a coalition. And so
wait a minute. So you saying all this fighting and shooting against the so-called ops that was going on in the streets in the 90s, that now you have to go to jail, and now all of y'all are part of the Midwest Coalition together. So it's Chicago versus everybody, or you know what I mean? So how did that feel?
Because of the environment, you better get in and you better get in line here, because like you said, this ain't about the Chicago street no more. It's about other areas now. You talking about other sets. You talking about the East Coast. You talking about the West Coast. You talking about down south. You talking about the Mexicans. You talking about the Aryans and Brotherhood. You talking about everybody now. So when some as drastic as that, you forget about everything else and you start working together for the common cause of your survival in there.
So did that make you start thinking a little differently by now? Man, even though these were my quote unquote so-called oppositions, now we're in here together and we got to ride together. Did that start to make you think a little differently about what was going on in the streets?
Yes, sir. I started thinking different like that from MCC. Because right now, you talking about a life sentence now. So a lot of things that you thought about and a lot of things you did is meaningless to you at this point right here. Only thing you want to reflect upon is getting up out of prison. So what we had out there, what we was on right now, both of us in this situation, we both need to be fighting our way up out of here.
So clearly, for you to have been given a life sentence, did you have any children before you were locked up?
Yes. I have 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. And
I guess one of them will have to be the little fella that we know as Lil Durk, the well-renowned rapper from here in Chicago.
Yes, sir. He wasn't number like 3 months when they took me, about 3-4 months before when they took me and arrested me. He was the youngest of them all at that time right there. And in fact, he was the only of my children out of the 5 children that I actually delivered personally. Was there and helped pull him out as the doctor allowed me to. And I took him, and I tell this story all the time. I took him and I told his mama, I said, this boy here gonna be great. I told her right there, she remember, everybody remember that right there, because I tell him this story a million times. You know, you're only great because your daddy told you it was gonna be great.
So this is your namesake, someone who's named after you, right? But how was it doing all, so you eventually did about what? How many years did you do total? 25. 25 years. So how was your relationship with Dirk and the rest of your kids as well during that prolonged period of time? I'm
a family man. Because as I told you, I was Granny's boy, and so she had a good family structure, and she embedded that in me because she was all about family. So I'm all about family, and I keep in touch with my kids through the whole time. And it almost will stress me out if I'm not in touch with my kids. I don't have no line of communication on them. You know, you only get 300 minutes in the feds, and I try to use a great amount of them minutes to make sure that I touch bases with them.
So I guess about 16 years into your sentence is when we start to really hear OTF, Dirk, right? He had to be about 16, right? So he's becoming this well-known rapper, and some violence, you know, that comes along with that. Like, how did that make you feel?
You know, in the feds, you move around. You don't you're not in like Illinois. You all over the place. Like, I'll be out in California, I'll be out New York, I'll be down south. I'll be all over the place. So you don't really hear the impact, because when I see them and when I talk to them, it's father and son, and they acting good boy on there.
Okay.
So I don't never get to hear about the OTF and what's going on out there. All of this, tell you the truth, Kirk, all this didn't come into my understanding until like I hit Victorville, when I got the life sentence off me. That's when I found out about this. Other than that, when they're in the visiting room, they like church boys, they sitting there, they talking. You know, my old cronies from the street, they trying to handle situations for me and keep things calm and not tell me on the phone so I don't be worried about it, you know. So everybody kind of kept me in the blind to most of what was going on.
So you said that you gave back a lot of time, right? Because you're here with us today. So now you're CRED life coach. What has that been like for you?
This has been the thing that I needed in order to show amends for, see, a lot of people look at Big Dirk and they see a figure which they think is something to glorify, something that's famous, something that to look up to. You know, you can't look up to something like that on my past like that when I was an instrument of the destruction of my own neighborhood. The very person that I come to hate about the way they did my mother selling her these drugs, I became that person. I became that individual that helped put another person's mother in that same situation, that helped put another person's father, sister, brother, auntie in that same situation. I don't want no one to think that glorifying what I did back then was a thing that you can sit up here and say, hey, he's like that, he's like that. No, I'm not like that, because I destroyed myself. I destroyed my community. I was destroying my people by doing these things. I didn't gang bang against nobody else. I was gang banging against my own people. I wasn't selling to nobody else. I was selling to my own people. So don't look at me in a way that you figure that this is a way that you can sit up here and say that he's all right. I wasn't all right. I'm all right now because I'm in a state of redemption. I'm in a state of repentance. So I owe this, Craig, to Craig. I owe this to Craig, you, Kurt, and all the brothers that brought me into this. I lead all the brothers that brought me into. I owe this first and foremost to God to show that I'm true about my redemption. I owe this to myself to right a lot of the wrongs I did out there. I owe this to my community to try to rebuild back what I destroyed out there. I owe this to my people to stop them to thinking that this is a life they need to live. We don't need to be killing one another. We don't need to be gang banging another one. We don't need opposition. You know that sentence they gave me, Kirk, that life sentence they gave me, that was a harsh sentence. That was harsh in the definition of what harsh is. They do things in state and the federal, give us harsh sentence. But you know who gave more harsh sentence than they do? We give each other harsh sentence. Capital punishment is placed upon everybody opposition. You see the opposition, the first thing you do is give him capital punishment by killing him. And that's the worst thing you can do is take a life. So you think sitting in jail, you looking at yourself and saying, hey, these people are doing me wrong. But you forgot you're doing the same thing because you're doing capital punishment on anybody you run into out there. So these things got to stop, and we got to put the boots on the ground. We got to take me and everybody that's getting out this prison now and put boots on the ground and get to these youngsters and let them know this ain't no glorified life. This ain't no way to live.